Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callus. Today we're going to do something a little different. It is a Friday. It is the 14th of June, the year of our Lord 2024. It is episode 655. But we're just going to change gears again altogether. Normally we do a free-for-all or a five for Friday, but today we're going to do Call a Cop. And I want to be clear, and I'll do this in the intro, but before we get there, let me remind you once again, like, share, and subscribe to the program, right? That's what makes the difference. That's what helps us overcome the algorithms. That is what is necessary to continue to grow, to get our voice out there. And look, I'm trying to bring you something unique, a different perspective outside of the box that you normally get put into. I do believe nuance is our friend and is important. Everything is not simple, cut, and dry. You can say there's black and white, but sometimes it takes a whole lot of effort to determine where does the black begin and where does the white begin. So I would just encourage you to do your part, to give it some thought, think about it, right? Think on it, if you will. And you can follow me on your social media of choice. I am at MeWe. I am a pro at Gab, and I have a page and a group over at Facebook. For now, you can still find my show on YouTube, and I'm on the podcatcher of your choice. You can subscribe, and if you're feeling particularly froggy, please rate and review this program. Here we go on with the program. All right, as I promised, I want to clarify for the purposes of introduction. One, there are multiple law enforcement arms, groups, however you want to phrase it. You have the local, you have the county, you have the state, and then, of course, the federal departments. I think everything can be said today would relate to all levels of law enforcement. But I also want to be clear that this is not hate on law enforcement day. This is not diss in law enforcement. This is an acknowledgement, while they are extremely important for maintaining order, and while we all recognize the value that they will often bring to any situation, and certainly to society as a whole, there are problems. And we're trading off liberty and freedom for order and security. And somewhere in there is a balance, right? How much liberty are you willing to give up to have security? How much liberty or how much freedom are you willing to give up in order to have order? Now, myself, my line is probably much further on the side of liberty than yours is. That's okay. So I'm wanting to set the context here because, to be clear, obviously this does not apply to every person that's worn a badge, wears a badge, or may very well wear a badge in the future, nor is this an attack or a blanket statement. It is merely an acknowledgement that there are problems, and it's requesting people to consider it and seek to assist in this matter. So, now that I've put that disclaimer, if you will, at the beginning, let us start with problem number one. Problem number one, we have a whole lot of federal organizations or arms of law enforcement that really and truly should not exist. They have no constitutional permission. I don't think they're much of a value add. Now, you could say the FBI is useful. And I might have bought that in 1930 or 1950. I'm not buying any long. I will never defend the ATF. I'm hard-pressed, really, to defend any branch or arm or organization within the federal government that is armed for the purposes of law enforcement or investigation. And I certainly don't understand why anybody thinks that's a net positive. But that being said, setting that all aside, I will acknowledge that most of the people that take those roles are good people. And they're trying to do a good job, and they think that they are a value add to society. And I would imagine that the majority of society thinks they are value add. So, Once again, now that I've clarified that, there are a whole lot of bad apples. In fact, I rather think that the few good apples that they are get rotten when they're thrown in the barrel with all the rotten apples. Yes, and I've inverted that on purpose. Because I think when you start off working in an organization that really has no constitutional authority to exist and really only exists to spy and corral we the American people, to hold us into a box that, limiting liberty, you're predisposed to enjoy that. Perhaps you're just Yankees, by another phrase. Now, that being said, there are a lot of good people that go into that. They think they're working a legitimate thing. They're looking at the foreign bad guys. They're looking at the inside the borders bad guys. They think they're doing a good thing. And to be sure that sometimes they do good things. But I also believe that most all of that could be handled at the state, county, or local level. Now, sometimes you maybe need some extra coordination, or maybe you need somebody to step in and assist when you're crossing state lines. Okay, fine. I mean, that is how they justified the FBI. But that doesn't explain all the other agencies, the alphabet agencies, if you will. So I would like to propose to you that if you love a federal agent, if you trust a federal agent, if you believe that federal agent is the best thing since sliced bread, okay, I'm not talking about your guy or your lady. Okay? And I got to say, by and large, they are the cream of the crop, by and large. But they also tolerate, and I would say perpetuate, a lot of bad, a lot of terrible things from their leadership, right? You listen to the way they're defending the FBI and the actions that the FBI took, and we're just following orders, and we're just doing what we're supposed to do, and all this other stuff. Does anybody actually believe that anymore? I mean, if you've ever listened to the ATF testify, they clearly have problems with the truth. I mean, there are so many other organizations that have badges that work on behest of the federal government that are allegedly there to save and protect society. But my underlying question is, are they really? Are they really? Now, when you go down to the state level, at the state level, realistically, you can justify any and all manner of law enforcement or peace officer, or however you want to phrase that. And that is the appropriate level for that stuff to be created, for sure. But there's supposed to be a county sheriff. The county sheriff is the highest elected law enforcement official within a state and is supposed to be where the buck stops at the county level. And realistically, you shouldn't even be operating within that sheriff's county without his blessing or permission. Of course, the state governor might think otherwise about that, and certainly the feds believe otherwise. But in reality, there's no check on the feds unless the state does it. And there's no check on the feds unless the county sheriff does it. So we need and appreciate any pushback or any control that they may maintain. But then you have to deal with the fact that you just don't have all those great sheriffs out there. And in fact, sometimes the sheriff is the problem, and then you're dependent upon the state to come in and fix it. Now, let me also say from the onset, living in Collin County, I have top-notch law enforcement at the county level. I would say even our city level in the city of McKinney is pretty darn good law enforcement. I mean, I'm happy to say that I don't interact with these guys on a professional level. It's a personal level. If I run across a law enforcement officer, I say hi, I ask how they're doing, and that's the extent of it. And that's the way I prefer it. Maybe I have to fill out a report with them for something that happened, but it's not me that they're usually there to see, right? Same thing with the sheriff. I've often joked that I'm on a first name basis with the Sheriff Skinner. I get to call him Sheriff. I mean, that's the kind of thing you want to see. That's what you depended on. You want for these folks to at least know who you are in passing, and for them to be good guys, and for them to look out for the greater good. For them to respect order, but also recognize liberty. Also recognize that they took an oath to uphold the state and the federal constitution, and that they shouldn't be doing things or allowing things that violate our rights. So again, I don't really see this as an issue in Collin County. Does it mean it's never happened? No. Does it mean it couldn't possibly happen? No. It just means that this is not a common occurrence. And you see there's some interaction and going back and forth between the feds and the state, and the state and the locals, and the locals and the state, and the locals and the feds. And the feds just think they run everything. I'm not sure that's the way it was set up, nor the way it should be working. Whatever preemption law may or may not be involved there, I'm kind of preferring the state to take the lead in most issues. I really am. And then when we're talking about your local police, once again, you want good, highly trained, qualified people doing that, and you hope for the best there, and you want them to project order and do the right thing. But the problem is all these guys, they work for politicians. They take orders from people up their chain of command who are often under the thumb of politicians. So then you have to deal with the fact that when you do have bad apples, they don't really get dealt with. Now, I always like to characterize law enforcement or peace officers as a necessary evil. Not so much that they're evil, but that they're necessary. I can make the argument that in a perfect society, we'd have no need for law enforcement, no need for peace officers. But then again, we don't live in a perfect society. I don't think we're ever going to live in a perfect society. Notwithstanding any utopia, socialist or otherwise, you're never, ever going to be able to do away with all law enforcement or all peace officers. It's just not going to happen per human nature. Now, when Christ comes back riding his horse, yeah, that's a different story. Yeah, everybody's going to know their pecking order, and they're all going to be bowing and confessing who's Lord. So I'm really not sure that that's going to be an issue at that point. But until that happens, there's a need. There is a function fulfilled by people that are in law enforcement, or if you prefer, peace officers. I want guys to be fairly well versed on the Constitution, fairly well versed on civil rights if they're going to carry a badge and a gun. I don't want them going out and finding ways around that. I want them to acknowledge that first and foremost. I want them to obey the higher law. I don't want them to just follow orders. I don't want them to just do what they're told and not question things. I want them to be willing to say, this is wrong, boss. Unfortunately, and it's not unique, but these are all civil employees. They all have a pension. They all are counting on that pension. So at some point, 25, 30 years from now, they won't have to work a regular full-time job. And I won't say that they haven't earned it by that time. But what I will say is I believe a good number of them put that retirement or that proposed retirement above, first and foremost, over their other responsibilities. Now, is it all? No. Is it a majority? Don't think so. But it is some. And it's quite a few. And this also comes into play when so-called bad apples get caught. Their buddies, their friends, their partners, they don't want to talk. They don't want to break that thin blue line. Now, this is another pause. I understand that. When I was in the military, for those few years that I was in the Navy, not grunt work, not frontline soldier, nothing that I want to uphold as being the same thing. But I understood those were my brothers. Those were my, well, a couple sisters, right? They were my people. I had their back. They had my back. If we went to war, I was dependent on them to go home at night. So I understand that conceptually with the boys in blue. And to a degree, I respect that. But they also have to key on, most importantly, is bad cops are bad cops. Bad law enforcement are bad law enforcement. Bad FBI agents are bad FBI agents. You should not and cannot continue to cover for those people. You have to be willing to call them out. You have to be willing to hold them accountable. In fact, they have a higher standard than the regular people do. Now, I was an enlisted man, right? I was a non-civilian. Law enforcement officers are civilians by nature, that they're not in the military, but they look at themselves as being a part. And again, I get that. To a degree, I respect that. I think it's probably necessary. They need to be able to kind of pull themselves out of what exactly is going on. They have to remain a certain level objective over what the average person would. And if you've dealt with a professional good cop, you know it. and you appreciate it and you recognize it for what it is and you're thankful that they're there, and you should be. But what's concerning to me, and again, we're gonna peel this back just a little bit more now. I don't see a major problem at local law enforcement facilities or offices here in Collin County. I don't really hear bad things. I don't really see bad things. I'm going to assume they're great. I'm going to assume the same from the Collin County Sheriff's Department. Again, it's not perfect. There have been problems. Bad things have happened, but they've been dealt with swiftly. I mean, you can just look back to the last thing that happened at the jail. The sheriff stepped in immediately and took action, and, to the best of his ability, or the county's ability, people were made whole. Is it perfect? No. Do we expect perfect? Well, kind of, yeah, but we also don't recognize it's not obtainable. Go up to the state level. Well, we've got our Texas Rangers. We got the Texas Department of Public Safety, aka the State Patrol. Those guys all have a hard job. They do a good job as far as we know, and they're pretty hardcore. And those are the people you want involved. Those are the people you want to step in and deal with problems that are maybe statewide or certainly beyond that single county, or you have corruption in the city or the county offices. Yeah, you want those state police. You want them to come in and do that. And really, the instances of corruption that have been made public are few and far between. Does that mean they're not there? No. Does that mean they've never happened? No. It just means it's not a common occurrence. And we are all blessed and thankful for that. So I've now gone by and I've exempted the local police because I really don't know of any issues here. I don't know of any issues in the local towns around me either. Most of those people are good guys. And I, just to be clear, I'm a big fan of some version of a requirement of living in the city you patrol. Now, I understand there is some value to being able to go home and not be recognized. But you can go to a different part of town. You can go in a different area than the precinct you patrol. It's entirely doable. But a residency requirement I see as a net positive. I know it's not everybody's favorite thing, but just I'm going to throw it out there because I think you should be vested in the area that you're working. That's a little different when you're in the sheriff's department, right? And you're covering an area that's on the far edge of the county, and maybe you live the next county over. Okay, fine. And it's real easy to say you can live in the county or the city that you work in, or a contiguous city or county that you live in. Solves that problem, right? Keeps people close, keeps them involved. And realistically, there's some cities that you can't afford to live in. I'm fairly certain that anybody in the Highland Park Police Department doesn't actually live in Highland Park. Just saying. Maybe the chief of police does, but by and large, you ain't living there. Same thing could be said for South Lake. I've heard the same about McKinney. I don't know if that's true. But again, most of they live down the road in Princeton or Allen, contiguous cities, right? Okay, we get to the state. I wouldn't want any state trooper, ranger, anything to live outside of the state of Texas. To me, that's a given. You have to live in the state you work in, right? Okay, that's all, again, all well and good. And they're going to have certain allegiances and connections to those communities that they serve. Again, awesome, great. Now we get to the federal issue, right? Because the feds, they're a branch above. They're separate. Most of them live them in the District of Criminals or the surrounding area, or in a separate enclave within whatever city they may be stationed at, that the FBI or ETF or whatever services across this country. And this is where it gets really difficult. Because they're so separated, because they see themselves above all that, they don't really feel like they are accountable to the very law that they enforce. In fact, I think it can be implied that a good number of them find greater value in bending the law, violating the Constitution, in order to catch people that they have determined are bad guys. Now, I would have some troubles with the people they define as bad guys. And certainly, if we've learned nothing over the last 4 years, it's that's mutable and abusable by the very agencies that are supposed to serve we the people by following orders. Again, some of it is because they want the almighty retirement. Some of it is they just don't care. And some of it is they're just followers. They follow the orders. They don't question anything. That's a problem. That's an issue. I don't know how we fix that. I don't know how we address it, but that's something you want to keep in mind. I mean, if you call a cop in the city of McKinney, chances are it's going to be, somebody that you've seen before, either on patrol or at an event. And even if you don't, maybe their partner is, right? This is not a problem. You want to have at least a passing understanding of the people in your local law enforcement. Maybe the same could be said at the county level, although if you're getting pulled over by the sheriff's deputy, that's kind of a bad thing for you, right? Or state troopers for that matter. So perhaps you don't want to know the sheriff's department or the troopers, but you want to at least have a familiarity with who the cops are in town because you want them, you respect them, you like what they're doing by and large. We're going to say, at least in my county, I don't really have any issues that I'm aware of. They're good people. They're looking to do the right thing. They're looking to protect their community, to protect their families. We can respect that. But it gets different when you get at that federal level. A lot of them are there because they're bucking for promotions. They're looking how they can make their career. They're looking for whatever it is they look for. They're not concerned about we, the people, because they don't go home and see us. There's no repercussions if they make a mistake. There's no consequences for bad behavior. I mean, think about the guy that killed Vicky Weaver. Did he legitimately have a consequence? Was there any negative effects on he or his chain of command? Some of those very same people were also involved in Waco, the Branch Davidian thing, right? Now look, I'm not defending what went on in Waco because I don't really know. But suffice it to say, I'm fairly certain it could have been handled in a different way. In fact, I'm certain that the sheriff told them he could handle it in a different way. But of course, the feds, they don't listen. They think they know better. They think they are better. They think that the rules don't apply to them. So when you're calling a cop, you want to keep it local. When you're calling a cop, you don't want just somebody coming in. How do you avoid that? Right? This is the underlying issue. Nobody wants to see a Fed. Unless you got a stash of counterfeit bills that you were paid with, you just don't want to see the feds. And I would tell you probably still don't want to see the feds. You'd like to hand that off to the local police and let them figure it out with the feds. You just want to check out. You don't want to be involved with that. Because they're going to get their man, and if they can take you down along for the ride, they don't care. We see it play out all the time. And for every good one, how many bad ones are there? I don't know. Now, you're wondering, well, Callis, why are you prattling on about this? What's the importance here? Well, let's look at it. They've rounded up, let's say, 1,500 people. I don't know if the exact number is true. At this point, I don't even care. They have spent a lot of time and resources to round up 1,500 people that took an unauthorized tour of the Capitol building. Really? I mean, that's our priority. That's what we want to spend our time and money with. Now, an individual agent ought to be saying, this is BS, boss. I don't want to do this. This BS, boss. These people didn't hurt anybody. This BS, boss. This is a waste of resources. But they don't. Or if they do, they're quickly shut up. Because, again, they want their career. They want their retirement. And again, to a degree, I don't blame them. But this case of misplaced priorities doesn't get fixed if you don't have agents that aren't willing to say, no, that's wrong. I'm not going to do that. You know, the FBI reclassifying people that dared to go to school board meetings as domestic terrorists. Meanwhile, the border's flipping wide open. People by the hundreds of thousands have flooded across per month, and not a darn thing's been done to correct that, deal with that. In fact, we've had them interfering with our attempts to re-secure the border. Now, granted, most of our attempts were there for show, but nevertheless, it was something, and they interfered. They shut us down. They pushed us back. Why is that? Why is the feds, federal law enforcement, chose to put a greater priority in hunting down people that went and protested at a school board meeting? They diverted valuable time and resources to go look for people that took an unauthorized tour of the Capitol. They did nothing about the Summer of Love. They did nothing about those members of the BLM and the Antifa. They don't care about who's coming across that border. In fact, I think they're encouraging it. And yet we want to trust them. We're supposed to put our trust in the federal law enforcement, that they're looking out for our better good. That we're going to be well taken care of by these alphabet agencies. I'm sorry. I don't get the warm fuzzies from that. I don't have any real concerns out of the local police. I'm quite content and happy with the sheriff's department and our state functionary police, right? The troopers and the rangers. I mean, I don't want to ever run across those guys, but if I do, I'm fairly certain that they're going to be professional and above board and do the right thing. But I have zero faith in the three-letter agencies at this point. And they've given me no reason to have any faith. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, there's not been a single deputy director or a single agent in charge or whatever of a field office that said, you know what? Honestly, this is a bad idea. We shouldn't be doing this. I reject those orders. I'm going to resign in disgust. Whatever. I haven't seen any of that. Now, does that mean that it didn't happen? I don't know. Doesn't mean there wasn't one or two early on. Maybe. Maybe it was a media blackout. Maybe they did the same thing to that they do to my show, right? Oh, we're going to just hush that up. I don't know. But it's very depressing if you were to stop and think about it, that these guys are more concerned about stay-at-home moms, the activist aunts, and a couple of truck drivers than they are of the people flooding across the border, that they are of the drug dealers, that they are of the cartels. One wonders how that is. Why did we get those messed up priorities? Keep in mind, the same FBI, the same alphabet soup agency peoples, the same 51 so-called experts that told us that the Biden laptop was a fraud. It was Russian disinformation. There's nothing to see here, folks. Go back to sleep. Everything is A-okay. They were all proven wrong. And the stupid thing is they caught the guy and punished him for filling out paperwork wrong. Not for smoking crack, not for the multiple other felonies that he did with people he was related to, underage people, and the kiddie porn. No, we didn't care about any of that. You filled out your paperwork wrong. Now, granted, it's something, and it's probably not all there is to see, but how do we get here? How do we get an agency so compromised that we have to wonder whether or not it's safe for us to go home at night sometimes? Oh, I said something. I'm going to get a visit. I mean, is that the world that we want to live in? Do we have our own secret Stasi force now? I don't know. Alex Jones might say that we do. I don't know. Roger Stone probably does. Right? Steve Bannon's in prison for reasons I still don't comprehend. Right? What kind of messed up clown world do we live in? And we've got these agents wandering around our country doing pretty much whatever they want on the behest of President Biden or his henchmen. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows what we're dealing with? Because we can't even tell what's real. So when I say call a cop, what I want you to understand is your best bet is get to know your local police on a personal level, preferably not a professional level. You should know who they are. You should appreciate them. You should share a coffee. I was going to say a drink or a donut, but that could be construed the wrong way. Or a pastry, whatever. Be friendly to them. Acknowledge them. Know why they're there. Truth be told, that local cop's going to have a lot more say in what goes on in your life, your day-to-day interactions or potential altercations than any Fed ever will. And if something were to happen, they're going to speak on your behalf, potentially. Now, they may get bullied and pushed out of the way by said Fed, but I would much rather have my local cops be my allies. I'd much rather have the local sheriff's department see me as a net positive in the community and know that I stand with them and I want them to do good things than the alternative. What I'm going to suggest to you is the only way to do that is to call your local cop. The sheriff's department serves us, and they actually act like it, especially in Collin County. I can't speak for what your sheriff does. This is the kind of law enforcement we want and we need. We should appreciate them. We should have grace for them, but they also need to have a little grace for us. The feds, no bueno. No trust, no faith, nothing. And of course, the state guys, well, you just want to steer clear of them if you can. In any case, the major takeaway is you may not like what the feds do, but don't blame the local cops. And the best way you can fight back against that is to befriend your local cop. Call a cop. And with that, this has been According to Callus. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you on the other side.